10. Abandoned on the mountain. Usha Bista was the first woman from the southern plains of Nepal to try conquering the highest peak in the world. Unfortunately, Usha became sick just a few hundred feet beneath the summit. She lacked adequate oxygen and became extremely exhausted. She got something known as cerebral edema, the swelling of the brain. At just 22 years old, she was then abandoned by her team members just an arm's throw from the top of the mountain. They left her for dead, but by an absolute miracle, a different group of climbers stumbled upon her unconscious body and managed to save her. The trouble actually started before Usha got sick. Her team leader harassed her the whole way up the mountain. Her Sherpa guide refused to help her, and then the other members of her team would not give her food or water even though she was dying of thirst. It was a group of Western climbers who found her half dead in the death zone and nursed her back to health. It was the foreigners who saved her when her own people basically killed her. Doctors had to amputate her right thumb, but otherwise, Usha descended the mountain alive. 9. Beck Weathers. Beck Weathers survived nearly dying on Mount Everest back in 1996. He was one of 8 members being guided to the summit. He had also recently had surgery and discovered when it was too late that the surgery caused him to lose his vision once he reached a high enough altitude. It was the day he was supposed to climb to the summit when he woke up completely blind. He was ordered to descend to Camp 4 and then got stuck in a blizzard with 10 other climbers. They couldn't find the camp and got lost in the storm. Beck and 4 other climbers were abandoned by the stronger climber who went to go find help. During the night, Weathers vanished. Help arrived the next day, but he was nowhere to be found. Everyone believed he was dead, and so they just left. He spent the next night freezing with his hands and face exposed, but miraculously managed to hobble down to camp the next morning. With his hands and face basically ruined and unable to eat anything, he was helped down to Camp 3, where Weathers was evacuated by a helicopter. He had to have his right arm between the elbow and the wrist, all 4 fingers and his thumb on his left hand amputated, and parts of both feet. He also lost his nose and needed reconstructive surgery to replace it, using tissue from his ears and forehead. Safe to say, he won't be climbing anything ever again. 8. Peter Kenlock. British climber Peter Kenlock managed to reach the top of Mount Everest in 2011. Unfortunately, minutes after he reached the summit, he went blind and was soon abandoned by his team and left to die in the cold. It happened as the team was descending the peak. The guides noticed that Peter was stumbling and slipping and acting far less coordinated than he should have. For the next 12 hours, the Sherpas tried as best they could to get Peter off the mountain. They gave him drugs and oxygen, but the slow descent put everyone else in danger of dying. They were running out of supplies and had no other choice but to abandon Peter and leave him for dead. To this day, Peter Kenlock is still stuck on Mount Everest, his body frozen as a terrifying ice mummy. 7. COVID-19 outbreak. In 2021, 51 people were forced to abandon their attempt to reach the summit of Mount Everest due to a COVID-19 outbreak. It seems kind of crazy that anyone would choose to climb the highest mountain in the world in the middle of a pandemic, but these 51 people thought it was a good opportunity. The Austrian operator in charge of the climb, Furtenbach Adventures, said the expedition needed to be stopped because those at base camp were getting sicker. To continue climbing would have been reckless because the people on the expedition may have gotten even weaker as they ascended higher up the mountain. If getting COVID-19 at home is considered dangerous, it's almost definitely considered fatal if you're thousands of feet above sea level in the middle of a mountain blizzard. Climbing Everest is risky enough already without needing to be put on a ventilator. The team members were pretty upset about the situation but understood the necessity of abandoning the mission. But what's really crazy is that these were only a handful of people trying to climb Everest during the pandemic. When Nepal welcomed climbers back in April of 2021, they quickly issued over 400 permits to eager explorers. 6. Shrika Shah Chlorphine. 6 Sherpas helped to bring down the body of Shrika Shah Chlorphine from Everest after her corpse was abandoned. The Canadian woman from Toronto died after a very slow descent from the top of the mountain. She had pushed herself to the top despite being extremely fatigued and low on oxygen, but it proved to be a fatal move because Shrika succumbed to her exhaustion and altitude sickness and died on the way down. To make this story even more tragic, her husband traveled to Kathmandu in Nepal in hopes that her body would eventually be brought down and off the mountain. Her corpse had been abandoned in the very place where she fell dead, along with 3 other climbers. The 6 Sherpas attempted to bring her down, but were hindered by poor weather after lugging her body about a quarter of a mile through the snow. To get her body all the way from near the summit down to Camp 2, which is low enough for helicopters to reach, the Sherpas had paid an estimated $50,000. Climbing Everest is expensive, but so is getting your body off it after you die. 5. Attack of the Sherpas. Simone Morrow, one of the most experienced mountain climbers in the world, had to abandon Mount Everest after he was almost killed by a group of angry Sherpas. The Italian national was involved in a dispute between himself, 2 of his fellow climbers, and the furious Sherpas. The climbers had a brief altercation with the Sherpas, but then the Sherpas left and everything seemed to be fine. That is, until the Sherpas returned with a party of about 100 and started throwing stones at the climbers. One of them even pulled out a knife and tried to stab Simone. Luckily, another group of climbers got in the way and were able to distract the Sherpas long enough for the 3 men to escape. They fled to a lower base camp and then abandoned their efforts to reach the top altogether, seeing as how they didn't feel like being ripped apart and left for dead in the snow. 4. Green Boots. Green Boots, as he's commonly known, has been abandoned on Everest for about 20 years. His corpse is actually a landmark on the northeast ridge, directly on the route to the summit. He's believed to be the Indian climber Siwang Apolajor, a man who died and was left on Everest back in 1996. He's curled inside a limestone cave, lying on his left side with his bright green boots clearly visible to all who pass by at 27,900 feet, 8,504 meters. Back in '96, Green Boots was part of a team from India trying to be the first to climb the mountain from the east side. 8 climbers died on May 10th after getting caught in a blizzard. 3 of the team members abandoned the group because it was too dangerous and headed back to camp. But Green Boots and the rest went and reached the top. They radioed in saying that they had gotten to the summit, but there was only radio silence after. It was assumed the group had died and the other climbers abandoned them and went back down. The other bodies have yet to be discovered. Only Green Boots remains as a grim reminder of just how dangerous the mountain can be. Currently, he's one of about 200 bodies still stuck on Everest. 3. Lincoln Hall. Lincoln Hall was an Australian mountaineer who had to be rescued back in May of 2006 after being abandoned on Mount Everest and left for dead. Lincoln managed to survive a full night alone at over 28,000 feet, 8,534 meters. He was part of a group that included a 15-year-old kid trying to become the youngest person to ever reach the top of Mount Everest. There were also some filmmakers making a documentary about the kid's attempt. The teen didn't make it and was forced to turn back when he found it too difficult to breathe, but Lincoln went on anyway. He reached the summit and spent 20 minutes there. But like so many other unfortunate climbers, he got sick on his way down, suffering from brain swelling. Lincoln began to suffer from hallucinations and extreme lethargy. After 2 hours of trying to help Lincoln down the mountain, the Sherpas gave up. Lincoln didn't appear strong enough to make it, and so they left him in the snow and covered him up with rocks. This was thought to be the end for Lincoln. The authorities even called his family to let them know he had died. But then, 12 hours later, a group of climbers on their way to the top stumbled upon his body. He was sitting up, his jacket unzipped, and very obviously still alive. The one who found him, an American named Daniel Mazur, told the Associated Press that he was shocked to see somebody sitting upright at 28,200 feet, 8,595 meters, with no gloves on, no hat, as if he had just woken up from a nap. Lincoln Hall was helped back down the mountain and went on to lead an exciting life, at least until 2012 when he passed away from mesothelioma, which he probably got from inhaling asbestos in the 1990s. 2. David Sharp. At least 40 people saw David Sharp in his final moments as he died near the summit of Mount Everest, and not a single person stopped to give him a helping hand. Before his unfortunate death, David Sharp had tried to climb Mount Everest twice, but failed each time. His resilience brought him back to the mountain at 34 years old. He had the courageous idea of climbing it by himself and not using any bottles of oxygen. He started climbing on May 13, 2018, but nobody knows if he made it to the top or not. On May 15th, a group of climbers discovered David curled in the limestone cave next to the body of Green Boots. He must have stopped in the cave on his way down to rest. The climbers took one look at him, assumed he was dead, and then left him there without even radioing to base camp for help. 20 minutes later, another group saw Sharp inside the cave. They also ignored him. 36 more climbers passed him that day, and nobody even bothered to check his pulse. And yet David had been alive most of that time. No one knows if someone could have helped him or saved his life, but they at least could have tried instead of turning their heads and walking away. Eventually, David Sharp passed away inside of the cave, cold, alone, and probably very scared. 1. Frances and Sergey Arsenyev. Frances Arsenyev was the first woman to reach the peak of Mount Everest without using bottled oxygen in 1998. She climbed the mountain with her husband, Sergey. They reached the summit easily enough, though they were a bit slow. They summited dangerously late in the afternoon and were forced to spend the night above 26,000 feet, 7,925 meters. Somewhere along the line they got separated. When Sergey got back to the camp, he was shocked to find that his wife wasn't there. She was still stuck somewhere above him on the mountain, so he grabbed an oxygen bottle and some medicine and went to look for her. Frances was seen the next day by a team of climbers from Uzbekistan who tried to carry her down the mountain a little bit but were too tired and abandoned her. They then encountered Sergey on his way up to his wife. That was the last time Sergey was ever seen alive. The next day, his ice axe and rope were found nearby Frances, who, believe it or not, was still alive. The group of climbers tried to help her down, but were forced to abandon her and go back to camp because she was unresponsive and near death. Frances died later that day, and her husband's corpse was found a year later. As it turned out, he had fallen down the side of the mountain while trying to rescue his wife.
Number 9. Arguing Russians. Fights between couples can often get out of hand. Screaming, shouting, and hurling objects at each other, sometimes they can get pretty violent. We love to watch this kind of drama on TV, but it's not like you can just grab a bag of popcorn and watch in real life, or can you? In May earlier this year, a guy was walking down the street in St. Petersburg, Russia, when he heard a couple arguing. You could hear the rage in both of their voices, so he decided to watch and let it play out. But he didn't just watch and listen. He went the extra mile and recorded it on his phone too, just like reality TV. It's a little rude and an extreme invasion of privacy, but he did it anyway. So much for intrusion, you would say, but the same witness turned out to be their lifesaver. Here's what happened. The couple was in the middle of an intense verbal spat when they were met with an unlikely interruption, and the guy that recorded the whole thing was actually just trying to get the footage of this historical building nearby at first. Olga Volkova and Yevgeny Karligin were fighting and screaming at the top of their lungs on the balcony of their second-floor apartment. That's when, suddenly, the railing broke loose and the two fell. They fell 25 feet below onto the hard concrete. The passerby who was recording immediately called for medical help. Paramedics arrived and rushed them to the hospital. According to the eyewitness, Olga and Yevgeny have a 10-year-old son who was inside the house when the incident happened. Maybe the couple didn't want to argue in front of the kid and stepped out onto the balcony. Whatever the reason, they sure were fortunate to have survived. An investigation concerning the integrity of the building is currently underway. Number 8. 16th Floor. First dates can have unexpected endings, but none as horrific as this one. 35-year-old Jennifer Rozoff was on a date with Stephen Close, but neither of the two had anticipated that the night would turn out to be deadly. In 2013, Jennifer and Stephen went out on a date to a Mexican restaurant. After they were done with dinner, Jennifer brought him to her apartment, which was only 8 blocks away on 57th Street, near First Avenue in New York. Just when you think that things were falling into place, something totally unforeseen happened. The two were having a good time, and they decided to take the conversation to the balcony. A set of French doors opened to her narrow balcony of her Stonehenge 57 apartment on the 16th floor. Jennifer, casually smoking a cigarette, holding a drink in her other hand, sat on the railing. According to reports, Stephen apparently told her to be careful and not to put so much weight on the railing, to which Jennifer said that she had done it before and it was fine. A few moments later, Stephen heard a crack, and before anyone could do anything about it, the metal railing gave way and threw Jennifer off the balcony backwards. She fell to her death on a construction scaffolding almost 140 feet below. After a thorough investigation, the police said that there was no chance of foul play. According to city law, buildings with more than 6 floors must inspect their exteriors every 5 years. Jennifer's luxury residence had been inspected a couple months before the accident. The management has ever since taken up maintenance and regular upgrades on the building. Number 7. Concert Backflip. Concerts have been a hotbed for mischievous fans for a long time. Some like to fling their bras at the musicians, but this 40-year-old wanted to try something new. He decided to fling himself. In the month of August this year, during a Dead & Company concert in the Citi Field Stadium in New York, ironically, someone turned out dead. A 40-year-old tried to do a backflip from the balcony of the venue during the intermission. He fell from a height of about 30 to 50 feet and was gravely injured. 5 minutes later, he was rushed to the nearby New York Presbyterian Hospital, where doctors pronounced him dead on arrival. A driver, who was an eyewitness, told reports that he saw the man flip before he fell onto the concrete. He hit the ground head first, and just from the look of it, you could tell that he wasn't getting back up. The driver also said that the fan was extremely drunk, and he reeked of alcohol. It was truly horrific for his brother, who was attending the concert as well. He immediately broke down after seeing his mangled body. Other concertgoers also got the shock of their lives when they heard screams in the stadium. Surely this is not what anyone would have expected. Number 6. Planking. Almost a decade ago, when internet trends were just gaining traction, planking took the world by storm. People from all over were seen showing off their core strength by laying like a plank at unusual places. People were seen planking on tree branches, on pool tables, between doors, railway tracks, parallel benches, and more. It was just another passing internet trend, but who knew that it would cost someone their life? A 20-year-old from Brisbane, Australia, decided to try this trend, but wound up losing his life in the process. Acton Beale thought he had the best planking idea. He would plank on the balcony railing of his 7th floor home. Sounds totally safe. If done right, he would have definitely gotten all the likes and shares he dreamed of. But a small mistake made things go haywire, and he ended up going viral for a totally different reason. So here's what happened. Beale and his friend were on the way home from a night out. The two were planking on various spots along the way, and Beale wanted to try planking on the balcony. As he went up on the railing, he tried to pull off the pose, which he had already mastered many times. Only this time, he lost his balance and plunged to his untimely death. The young one's death sent shockwaves around the world as authorities started pointing out how dangerous the trend can be. Laws were put into place prohibiting high-risk activities such as planking on any private property. The action seems to have paid off, as Beale's death was the first planking death ever recorded, and fortunately, it was the last one too. Do you remember the planking trend? Did you try it out? Let us know in the comments, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Balconing. Vacations are meant for fun and letting loose, but sometimes people let the booze get the best of them. A 31-year-old British tourist visiting Spain made the headlines in June this year after he was fatally injured and found in a pool of his own blood. The unnamed guy had been drinking heavily and had consumed laughing gas right before he plunged from his 3rd floor balcony. He had rented a holiday home for himself and friends at San Pedro. The group was partying and trying to make the most of their vacation. When this guy thought of cooling down a bit, he decided to jump from the balcony and dive straight into the swimming pool. Now, we have seen many videos with people pulling the stunt off effortlessly, but things don't always go as planned. Pulling off this high-risk dive sounded too good to be ignored. The only problem was, thanks to his intoxicated state, he totally miscalculated his dive. He completely missed splashing into the water. Instead, he hit a sunshade and landed on the ground. He suffered serious head injuries, damage to internal organs, and numerous fractures. He was rushed to the hospital and was later reported to be in critical condition. Investigators suspect that the copious amounts of laughing gas and alcohol in his system led to the fall. Laughing gas, or nitrous oxide, has a very strong effect on the nervous system. It can cause hallucinations and can make people delirious. This is not an isolated incident. Every year, several people try to dive from their balcony into the pool. In 2018, 8 such fatalities were reported from the Balearic Islands alone. The number of such cases have been so high that Spanish authorities have started calling it balconing. Number 4. Carnival Cruise. Grief befalls a family during a vacation when a man from Indiana plunges to his death from the most unexpected of balcony fails on their cruise ship. Cruise holidays are meant for enjoyment and relaxation, but this family had something entirely different etched out in their fate. In 2019, Brian Rice had boarded the Carnival cruise ship with his wife. The ship was returning to Miami port after a 6-night cruise around the Caribbean. The couple was close to Miami when Brian fell from the balcony on the 9th floor deck. He came tumbling down 4 levels to crash onto the 5th deck. Eyewitnesses described how distraught his wife was. She was inconsolable as she saw Rice's unconscious body. Rice had suffered from blunt force trauma, according to the medical examiner's statement. The incident was clearly not a suicide, according to investigators, but it is still not clear how Rice fell. The cruise ship authorities chose not to announce the death to the guests immediately, since it would create a sense of panic, but most of them had figured it out already. Many passengers even said that they heard a loud thud by the restaurant area of the ship. A GoFundMe page was set up for the grieving family to get them through the extremely difficult times. We're sure that the family needs all the love and support they are receiving and more. Number 3. Drunk Russian. Alcohol can aggravate the darkest thoughts in our minds, and for Alexei Rostkov, it pushed him to take his own life. But from the incidents that followed, it seemed like the Grim Reaper was not in the mood to take Alexei's soul. The 22-year-old survived not 1, but 2 suicide attempts, one after the other. Talk about luck. In November 2009, Alexei had decided that there was nothing left for him in this life, and it was just better to end it. He had finished 3 whole bottles of vodka when he finally decided to make it his last day on this planet. His wife, Yekaterina, was also present in their 5th floor apartment in Moscow when he spontaneously jumped from the balcony. But as fate would have it, he survived the 50-foot fall with minor scratches. Alexei wasn't happy with the second chance at life that he got. Irritated, he went back up to his apartment. As natural as it would seem, his terrified wife screamed at him for what he had just done. The man decided it was wise to just walk out of the room. But here's what makes the whole episode stranger than it already was. He chose to get out of the room through the window again. Yep, he took the plunge all over again. She immediately called the paramedics, but Alexei didn't need any special medical attention. He had survived the second fall too, again with just a few cuts and bruises. Later, while talking to reporters, Alexei revealed that he jumped the second time because his wife was screaming at him. After he came to his senses, he realized what had happened and the immense stroke of luck that he had on that really strange day. Number 2. Malibu. At the beginning of the year, a dozen of partygoers faced one of the worst nightmares of their lives. The shocking accident left more than 9 people injured, and 4 of them had to be taken to the hospital straight away. A sea-facing home in Malibu, California, with the bright sun and ocean air, seemed like the perfect place for a summer birthday. The guests were enjoying themselves and having fun on the balcony when the structure literally collapsed. It wasn't just a railing which broke or a corner that failed. The entire balcony collapsed. On the other side of the beach house was the Pacific Coast Highway, which is actually a main artery road to LA, so the commotion caused a huge traffic pileup. Things probably wouldn't have turned out this bad if there was sand beneath the house to buffer the fall. Unfortunately, the balcony crashed onto giant jagged rocks on the shoreline, which were almost 10 to 15 feet below. The owner of the rental home was questioned regarding the accident. She told the news that she had clearly told the renters not to host any parties. The maximum number of guests that she allowed on the property was not to exceed 5 to 6 members. But on that dreadful day, there were almost 30 people present. The deck was already in shambles when the guests arrived. The weak structure and the weight of having so many people on one spot led to the awful incident. The accident might have left the guests with some long-lasting trauma, but things could have been much worse. And number 1, Alex Terrazas. When you want to calm your senses and energize your body, nothing beats a good stretch during a yoga session. Alex Terrazas knew this, but one day, she took her morning yoga routine a little too far. She went to try out some advanced yoga poses. She decided to do something extreme. She was practicing a pose where she had to hang upside down with her knees bent. Fate wouldn't have been so unfortunate had she chosen a safer location to practice. The young woman thought the balcony would make for the perfect spot, which it was, for maybe 2 seconds. As she hung upside down, with her head over the railing towards the ground below, she lost her balance and fell. She plunged face first from the 6th floor, 80 feet to the ground. You would think that falling from this height would kill someone, but somehow, Alex survived. She ended up with 110 broken bones, but hey, it's still a miracle that she was even alive. Alex was rushed to the hospital, where she had to undergo 11 hours of surgery. She had numerous other medical procedures in the months following to regain her lost mobility. 2 months after the fall, she was reported to have been recovering well, thanks to a good dose of daily physical therapy sessions. Talk about one bad move that can change your life forever. Number 9. German poker tournament robbery. This incident that took place in Germany sounds like it is straight out of a heist movie. In 2010, a band of young robbers chose to rob a poker tournament in Germany. However, they were unaware that the tournament was being televised, and thousands of viewers witnessed the crime. 4 men, aged between 19 and 21, stormed into the Berlin hotel, hosting the event in broad daylight. What ensued was panic-stricken screams from the participants and total chaos. At about 2 p.m., the masked men attacked the tournament area of the hotel. They threatened the cash desk staff and grabbed whatever money they can find. The poker tournament was the largest of its kind ever held in Germany, and the prize money was said to have been of €1 million. The final rounds of the event were being televised live, and the news instantly spread like wildfire. One of the robbers was pinned down by a security guard, but he somehow managed to escape. There were rumors inside the hotel that men came armed with grenades and machetes, which further fired up an already panicked crowd. The robbers fled with $327,000. Fortunately, people only suffered minor injuries from the scuffle, and no one was hurt by the masked men. Although they managed to grab a significant amount, the celebrations were short-lived. The mastermind of the whole robbery was caught within a few days, and the rest of the men were arrested soon after. Number 8. Impaled. When you're on live TV, sometimes things go wrong, and there's not a lot you can do to cover it. Breaking away from the script and technical difficulties are common, but what happened in this morning show in Poland is something that left the viewers in total shock. In 2016, host Maryna Rogalska had invited a magician on her morning show called Questions for Breakfast. The magician wasn't an amateur. They had invited Marcin Polonowicz, who was a semi-finalist on Poland's Got Talent. The segment was going quite well when Marcin asked the host to take part in the next trick. Maryna readily and quite excitedly agreed to it. In the trick, she had to slam her hand on a brown paper bag, avoiding the one with a nail sticking upwards. Marcin must have clearly got mixed up in his head. Maryna screamed in pain as the nail struck her palm. For a brief moment, the magician couldn't believe what had happened. He thought Maryna was joking, but then he noticed the nail sticking out of her hand, more like through her hand. She was immediately taken to the hospital. The channel released a statement saying Maryna was fine and her wounds were superficial. Maryna also made a point to say that it wasn't Marcin's fault. They had already practiced the trick once before going live, but the bags got mixed up during the shoot. Maryna probably won't try any more stunts like that again on her show. Number 7. Exbroadcaster. It was just another day for TV 24-year-old journalist Allison Parker, who was on field with camera person Adam Ward. The two journalists from WDBJ from Roanoke, Virginia, were assigned to interview Vicki Gardner, the executive director of one of the local chambers of commerce, on August 26, 2015. Alice was in the middle of the live interview when the most unexpected thing happened. The crew was attacked by a gunman. At 6:46 a.m., gunshots were heard and Adam's camera fell to the ground. For a brief moment, the camera captured the gunman holding a Glock 9mm pistol. Amid the screams and panic at the scene, Allison and Adam died on the scene, while Vicki survived the injuries. The identity of the gunman came as a shocking revelation in the case. The 41-year-old man who brutally attacked them was identified as Vester Lee Flanagan II, who was a former employee of the same news channel. He had been fired a couple of years ago after a few employees complained about his odd behavior. After Flanagan was identified as the shooter, a manhunt ensued for 5 long hours. At the end of the chase, he shot himself before the cops could arrest him. Flanagan was hired at WDBJ in 2012. Soon after he joined the news team, he started getting into conflicts with photographers and other reporters. There are written reports at the office of employees feeling threatened by his strangeness. A year later, he was fired for his volatile nature. He lashed out in the newsroom and had to be escorted out by security. Flanagan was holding a grudge against Allison and Adam. According to his social media posts, In personal notes, the two late journalists had allegedly made racist remarks against him and complained about him. 2 hours after the crime, he sent a 23-page fax to ABC News titled, "Suicide Note for Friends and Family," where he wrote that he was subjected to discrimination for being a homosexual black man. Number 6. Balloon Boy Hoax. How far would you go to get some fame? From the hoaxes and antics people have been pulling off lately, what this family did might not come as a surprise. On October 15, 2019, the police in Fort Collins, Colorado received a call from Richard Heen and his wife. Their 6-year-old son Falcon was trapped inside a flying saucer-shaped gas balloon. The couple said that they made the balloon and that the kid accidentally got trapped inside the plywood box attached to it. Immediately, the National Guard and local police set out on a chase to bring Falcon back safely. The balloon had already covered 50 miles within an hour and had reached a height of 7,000 feet. It finally landed 12 miles away from Denver International Airport. But here's what makes the incident strange. The child wasn't found inside. Later the same day, Falcon was recovered from the Heen family's attic, where he had been hiding the whole time. The incident had caught the media's attention, and everyone wanted to know what had happened. The family was interviewed the same evening after Falcon was found. Anchor Wolf Blitzer from Larry King Live asked Falcon why he was hiding. The little one looked at his father and very innocently said, "You guys said that, we did this for the show." Falcon had no idea that he had just uncovered the carefully planned hoax drawn out by his own parents. It was one of the most sensational revelations to ever air on live TV. Do you think there should have been consequences for the parents that sent police on a wild goose chase? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Eyes on the Ball. 39-year-old Shannon Stone took his son out to a Texas Rangers game in July 2011. What was meant to be a day of fun soon turned into tragedy, and the entire incident was caught on the camera that was covering the match. In the middle of the second inning, Rangers all-star outfielder Josh Hamilton threw a ball that went flying into the stands, straight towards where Shannon and his son were seated. Shannon obviously wanted to play hero for his son and put his firefighter skills to the test. Shannon lunged to catch the ball and reached over the railing, but while doing so, he lost his balance. He fell 20 feet, landing headfirst. He had crashed onto the concrete floor behind the stadium scoreboard. The entire fall was caught on camera. Even the fans at home had seen the unfortunate accident. When the incident happened, no one thought it would cost a life. Even the commentators had chuckled at Shannon's attempt at catching the ball. Brad Ziegler, a pitcher from the Oakland team, told reporters that Shannon was immediately put on a stretcher. Stone was worried for his son and asked a first responder to check on him, who was up there alone. Those turned out to be his last words. He had suffered from some serious internal injuries from the fall. People who saw Shannon said that he was conscious and talking. He was even swinging his arms, so no one expected how serious the internal injuries really were. Shannon didn't even reach the hospital. He went into cardiac arrest and died in transit. So the next time you're having a fun time watching the game from the stands, don't lean over any railings to catch a fly ball. It's not that important. Better safe than sorry. Number 4. Cooking with Chef. The camera captures everything, and this chef in a Slovakian TV show learned it the hard way. Back in January 2016, during a live morning show called Telerain, the camera was focusing on the host and the guest who was busy talking. It was just like any other normal morning show, but a quick pan towards the kitchen changed everything. As the camera moves to the kitchen, it shows the 36-year-old TV chef, Lubomir Herko, using a credit card to form lines with a white powder on the counter. The clip also shows a rolled-up blank note next to it. As Herko noticed the camera, he immediately drops down the card and looks up with a nervous smile. The clip was broadcast live, and this absurd shot went viral soon after. Police immediately contacted the channel to start an investigation into the matter. However, according to a statement by the broadcaster, the white substance used by Herko wasn't a drug. In fact, it was a joke they had planned for the segment. Chef Herko, in an interview, said that he was apologetic about the whole incident. The white substance in the clip was actually powdered sugar, which he had spilled earlier. Or was it? Number 3. Haunted Doll. Debbie Merrick and her husband chanced upon a set of vintage dolls at a secondhand shop. Debbie wasn't a collector. She didn't even like dolls, but when she heard the dolls were selling for so cheap, she thought that maybe she could resell these and pocket a profit from them. Like, who doesn't like making a few extra bucks? Debbie had no clue what would happen next. The couple had stored one of the dolls under their bed, while the other two were locked away in drawers. The next morning, when the couple woke up, her husband noticed at least a dozen scratches on his knees. It was enough to send a chill down their spine. The doll had started giving them an eerie feeling, so Debbie decided it was time to put it away. She stored the vintage doll in a storage box stacked below a couple other things in her shed. That's when the second shock came. When she went to the shed again, the doll's pearl necklace was hanging from the edge of the box. The couple was featured on ITV's This Morning in 2017 while the alleged paranormal activities were happening in their home. The doll was placed next to them in a rocking chair. We can't really tell if the doll was really haunted or not, but midway through the interview, the chair started moving on its own. Was it a gimmick, or did the doll really possess supernatural powers? Number 2. Mysterious Milwaukee. We have heard of UFOs and alien hoaxes, but what these newscasters caught in the Milwaukee sky was truly baffling. In 2018, Fox 6 News stumbled upon some alien lights in their broadcast sky view. The confusion was clear in the reporters' voices when they discussed among themselves, trying to figure out what the lights were. At first glance, it appeared like fireworks, but here's where things got weird. Fireworks disappear after a few seconds, but these lights remained. In fact, the lights seemed to flow in different formations in the sky. After the live telecast of the scene, many people online tried to figure out what the lights were. Were we finally making contact with an extraterrestrial species, or was it an optical illusion? The reality was much less sensational. When local reporters went to the spot to check out what these alien lights really were, they found out those specks in the sky weren't even lights in the first place. Those were seagulls. What? But how? Due to the camera's shutter speed, the outline of the birds was blurred, making it difficult for anyone to identify them. After the revelation, a video from the ground was released which proved that the lights were in fact seagulls. Sorry to disappoint the alien enthusiasts out there. And number 1, Big Brother. Justin Sebeck was our participant in Big Brother Season 2, and his behavior on the show earned him an infamous status. Though Big Brother doesn't necessarily count as live television, his actions were still caught on camera. Sebeck's misdemeanors led the producers to expel him from the show. No, we are not talking about being nominated out or being voted out. The guy was thrown out of the show. We all know reality TV thrives on drama, but Sebeck went too far, even by those standards. Sebeck had been known for his violent outbursts throughout the season. He would often threaten the other house guests and frequently deface the property, but things took a nasty turn during a drunken conversation with another house guest named Krista Stegall. Krista and Sebeck were making out in the kitchen when he took a shovel and pretended to bash her head with it. So what? It was a joke, right? Well, what happened next was even more shocking. He put the shovel down and picked up a knife from the kitchen drawer. The two were making out when Sebeck took the knife and held it to her throat. He asked her a hypothetical question on what would happen if he killed her. Krista was completely unfazed by the knife, but Sebeck's behavior was unacceptable. He could have harmed her pretty bad. Soon after the incident, he was kicked off the show. But he is not the only one who was expelled from the show. Over the course of 22 odd seasons of Big Brother, he is one among 4 house guests to be expelled from the house on the grounds of violence or damage to the property. After all, no matter what, there is a limit to how wild things can get. Thanks for watching. Have you ever seen anything crazy on live TV? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.